Please, don't lift it, human. She begged, but he did, and shocked to see her body. The void between the stars was silent as bone. Captain Orion Vance stood alone on the bridge of the Argonaut, his reflection fractured across the dark glass of the viewport. Outside, only the slow drift of a dead asteroid field floated in the black, each rock glinting pale under the light of a dying red dwarf. He hadn't planned to be here. The nav route had been clean, empty. But the signal had found him anyway, an ancient distress ping, faint as a dying heartbeat. It had whispered through the comms just once. Please, don't lift it. Then static. No coordinates. No ship ID. Just that one trembling voice. And Vance had felt something tighten in his chest, an instinct forged from decades of battle and loss. He should have ignored it. No captain diverted an armed starship for a ghost signal. But he had. He didn't even know why. Maybe because the voice had sounded like someone who had already given up. And he had seen too many give up. Approaching origin point, said Mara, the ship's calm synthetic intelligence. Asteroid Theta 7. No life signs detected. Caution. The rock has been abandoned for 73 years. Drop us in close, Vance muttered. His voice was gravel, worn from too many wars. Thrusters flared. The Argonaut drifted toward the cracked gray husk of Theta 7. As the ship's lights swept across its surface, they caught the ruins of an old mining outpost, collapsed gantries, shattered domes, skeletal walkways bent under ancient meteor scars. No power, no comms, no beacons. Dead. But as the landing gear bit into the dust, the proximity scanner chirped once. A faint biosign. Vance's jaw flexed. Suit up. The outpost smelled of rust and vacuum-seared rock, even through the filters of his helmet. Vance's boots crunched across the powder. His rifle hung low on his chest, though his gut told him he wouldn't need it. Whatever lived here wasn't a threat. More likely it was already half gone. His wrist display pulsed faintly, tracking the biosign. It led him through the broken husk of a storage dome and down a fractured stairwell where shadows bled like ink. Each step echoed too loud. Somewhere deep below, a vent fan squealed once and died. Then he saw her. She was lying against the far bulkhead of a collapsed maintenance bay, half buried in dust and ash. The first thing that struck him was the color of her skin, a deep cobalt blue that shimmered faintly under the beam of his torch. The second was how still she was, like something carved from glass. Her body was wrapped in shredded cloth that clung in dark streaks of dried blood. Her hands trembled as she tried and failed to lift her head. Vance crouched. Hey, his voice softened instinctively. Stay still. I've got you. Her eyes flickered open. They were gold, not the flat yellow of human iris implants, but molten gold, liquid and alive even in the dim. For a moment, they focused on him. Then her lips parted, and the words came like cracked porcelain. Please, don't lift it. What? He asked quietly. Her shaking hand drifted to her left shoulder, where the cloth was stuck dark against her skin. She pressed it down weakly, as if hiding something. Don't. See. Her voice broke. Her head fell sideways, breath shallow. Vance swallowed hard, then reached with gentle fingers and peeled back the cloth. What he saw froze him. There, burned deep into her blue skin, was the insignia of the Terran Expeditionary Corps, the sigil of his own command unit, the starburst in twin orbit rings. But it was mirrored, seared backward as if deliberately inverted. His insignia turned into a lie. Vance's jaw clenched until it ached. This was no accident. Someone had branded this being, this girl, with his mark, twisted and cruel, to ruin his name, to frame him, or worse. Her breath rattled softly. Hang on, he whispered. You're not dying here. He swept her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, hollow, fragile, heat bleeding through his suit like a fading ember. As he climbed the broken stairwell with her against his chest, he felt her heartbeat flutter against his ribs, like the wings of a trapped bird. The Argonaut's medbay hummed with cold white light. Sterile air hissed through vents as Vance set her gently on the medcot. Mara extended the autoscan cradle overhead, bathing her in blue beams. Subject, female, non-human. Unknown species, Mara reported. Critical trauma, multiple lacerations, dehydration, malnutrition, severe dermal burn, organic compounds fused with tissue. Estimated survival probability, 22%. Vance stripped off his gloves and started cleaning her wounds himself. His hands were steady, though his mind wasn't. As he cut away the shredded fabric, he saw how her body had been marked with bruises, electrical whip scars, and restraint cuts on her wrists and ankles. Someone had tried to erase her, and when that hadn't worked, they had tried to turn her into a weapon. Or a message. He placed a cold compress over the burn on her shoulder, the warped sigil that didn't belong to her, and his stomach twisted. Every officer in the Outer Rim knew that emblem. It carried his name, his reputation, his entire life's work. Whoever had done this hadn't just hurt her. They had made her a living accusation. She needs blood plasma, type unknown, Mara said. Cross-species transfusion not recommended. Then synth it, Vance growled. Keep her alive. He stayed by the medcot until her breathing steadied. It took hours. Outside the viewport, Theta 7 drifted into darkness. The faint starlight haloed her golden eyes whenever they fluttered open for seconds, then closed again. She never spoke. Vance found himself staring at the burn on her skin again and again. The more he looked, the more he knew this wasn't random. The edges were clean, the lines carved with a precision torch, not improvised. Whoever did it had taken time, planned it, planned for him to find her. He'd seen enough traps to know one when he walked into it. 3 hours later, when she finally stirred and tried to sit up, Vance caught her shoulder gently. Easy, he said. Her gaze wavered, unfocused. Then it locked on him. Even weak, there was something ancient in her eyes. Not age, something older than that. Like someone who had seen too many worlds burn. Where am I? She whispered. Safe, Vance said. It felt like a lie the moment it left his mouth. Her throat worked. They'll come. Who? Her jaw tightened. Kale. Draven. The name hit Vance like a shard of ice. He hadn't heard it in 12 years. Kale Draven, the ex-commander who had betrayed their fleet during the Perseus mutiny, vanished into the void with a stolen dreadnought and a handful of loyal killers, officially presumed dead. Vance had seen his name scrubbed from the rolls. And now this broken alien girl was saying Kale had done this, to her, using his insignia. Why? Vance asked quietly. Her breath hitched. I saw them stealing quantum warheads in the docks at Vega Spire. I told them I would go to the council. They laughed. Her eyes drifted shut, then snapped open again with a spark of fear. He said he would burn me with your mark. So when they found me, they would hunt you. Vance's knuckles whitened on the edge of the medcot. It was all clear now. Kale wasn't dead. He was building something, and he wanted Vance erased before it began. By the time she fell back into an easy sleep, Vance was on the bridge again. The stars wheeled silently beyond the glass. His ship was alone, deep beyond patrol routes, a single spark in endless dark. He poured himself a cup of synth coffee, black and bitter, and the weight of what he'd seen pressed heavy on his chest. He could turn back, drop her at the nearest council station and walk away, pretend none of it had happened. Maybe that was even the smart move. But when he closed his eyes, he saw her golden stare, half gone, yet defiant. Still alive when she shouldn't be. Still fighting. Vance had lived through wars that had erased entire continents. He had watched whole cities crumble in silence from orbit. He had buried friends whose names no one remembered anymore. He had told himself he was done saving people. And yet, he keyed in a private encryption channel. The console pinged as the course plotted. New heading? Mara asked. Vega Spire, Vance said. That system is under embargo. Entering its zone could compromise. Mark it, he snapped. We're going. Silence hummed. Then, course locked. Vance stared out at the infinite black. The burn mark on her shoulder haunted his mind like fire. He knew what Kale was doing. This wasn't just revenge, it was a message. I can break what you protect. Vance closed his hand into a fist. Not this time. Thrusters ignited. The Argonaut turned slowly, cutting a silver path toward the distant stars. Behind them, the dead rock of Theta 7 faded into shadow. Ahead lay Kale Draven, and a war that hadn't even begun. The Argonaut slipped through the black like a silent blade. Stars reeled in slow arcs beyond the bridge viewport, distant and cold, as Captain Orion Vance stood with his arms folded, watching the data readouts flicker on the consoles. The hum of the ship was the only sound, a low heartbeat in the dark. Behind him, the medbay door hissed open. Captain, Mara said softly through the overhead comms. Subject is conscious. Vance turned. He hadn't expected her to wake this soon, not after what she had endured. Lyra sat upright on the med cot, the pale light of the scanners washing over her cobalt blue skin. She still looked fragile, bones like glass under her smooth flesh, golden eyes too large for her thin face. But her gaze was steady now, focused. No fear, just a quiet tension, like a string drawn back on a bow. Vance stepped inside. You're awake, he said. You didn't leave me. Her voice was soft but clear now, no longer fractured. There was something unnervingly direct in the way she said it. Not gratitude, not surprise. Just observation. I don't leave people to die, Vance answered. Lyra's gaze lingered on him for a moment, as though weighing that. Then she looked down at her hands. The faint tremor had gone. When she spoke again, it was sharper. Kale Draven is alive. Vance felt the old name hit like a punch to the gut. I know. You knew him? I served with him. His jaw tightened. A long time ago. Lyra's golden eyes flicked up. Then you know what he is. Once he was an officer. No, she said flatly. He was always this. She told her story in fragments at first, like shards of broken glass. Lyra had been a star mapper, an independent cartographer from the Lyran Spiral, a people who lived in drifting crystalline megastructures far beyond the Council's reach. Her kind rarely crossed into human space, but she had been hired by the Vega Spire shipping syndicate to chart new slipstream routes along the Outer Rim. It was supposed to be simple, safe. Then she had seen them. Kale and his men, human deserters, offloading military-grade quantum warheads from a cloaked freighter at the Vega docks, weapons forbidden by every treaty. She had captured their cargo manifests and biometric tags on her neural scanner. She had meant to bring them straight to the Council. They caught me before I left the dock, she said quietly. Soren Vale stunned me. Kale laughed. He said, if I spoke, they'd burn me with your mark, so that when the Council found me, they would not see me. Her voice faltered, but her eyes did not. They would see you. Vance stayed silent, fists clenched at his sides. They took me to the mines on Theta 7, she continued. They beat me until I stopped screaming. Then they heated a molecular brander. They made me watch as they carved the sigil into my skin. They told me it would carry your biosignature, that when they found my body, the Council would burn you. Her hands curled slowly into fists. But I didn't die. She said it simply. As a fact, Vance realized his mouth had gone dry. Kale always wanted a stage, he said finally. This time, he chose me. He chose you because you are known, Lyra said. He wants the Council to destroy you before you can speak. He will not stop. Vance exhaled. Then we speak first. Lyra tilted her head. How? I need proof, something the Council can't deny. She hesitated. Then, my scanner core. I hid it. Vance's eyes sharpened. Where? Vega Spire, Dock Ring 9, behind the grav stabilizer pylons. That system's under embargo, Mara chimed from the ceiling. Entering it would violate. Noted, Vance said. Plot the course. Lyra blinked. You're going back? Yes. She looked at him for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable, but something subtle shifted behind her eyes. A faint spark, as if the frozen edges of her had cracked just enough to let a little light through. You don't even know me, she said softly. I don't have to. The Argonaut knifed through the slipstream, silver light roaring past the hull. Vance stood at the helm, hands locked on the controls. He could feel Lyra behind him even without looking, her presence quiet but sharp, like a blade sheathed in silk. She spoke little during the transit. Instead, she stood at the viewport, watching the stars smear into white arcs. Sometimes her fingers brushed her shoulder, where the inverted sigil still marred her skin. She never winced. She never looked away from the stars. When they dropped from slip space, Vega's spire bloomed ahead like a dying sun. The station hung in orbit over a gas giant, a ring of fractured spires connected by skeletal trusses. Fires still burned in some sections from the embargo war. The docks were quiet, patrolled by scavenger drones and black market corsairs, but no council ships. Not exactly welcoming, Vance muttered. Dock Ring 9 is on the dark side, Lyra said. Of course it is. They came in silent, no running lights, drifting like debris. Vance set the Argonaut to low-power stealth mode and glided toward the ring's shadow. The station loomed huge over them, a maze of wrecked gantries and half-collapsed cargo towers. Scavenger drones flitted between the ruins like insects, their lights sweeping. One passed close enough that Vance could see his own face reflected in its lens. They landed on a dead docking spur, magnetic clamps locking with a dull thud. Stay close, Vance said as they cycled the airlock. Lyra only nodded. She had changed into a sleek black vac suit from the armory, its surface catching starlight like liquid shadow. Her golden eyes glowed faintly behind the visor. For a moment, Vance almost forgot she was alien at all. Dock Ring 9 was silent as a tomb. Their boots drifted over broken plating as they moved in zero-G down the maintenance shaft. Dust floated like ghost ash around them. Lyra led the way, her movements unnaturally graceful in the weightlessness. They slipped through twisted beams and shattered bulkheads until she stopped before a cracked stabilizer housing. There, she whispered. She reached inside the panel and withdrew a small crystalline sphere, faintly glowing. My scanner core, she said. It holds Kale's cargo logs. Vance reached to take it, and the shadows exploded. A pulse bolt screamed through the dark. Metal shrieked as it tore past Vance's helmet and shattered the wall behind him. Lyra spun, eyes wide. Soren Vale emerged from the dark above them, mag boots clamping to the ceiling. His combat armor gleamed dull gray, a viper grin slashing across his scarred face. Hello, Captain, he drawled over comms. Kale sends his regards. Then he fired again. The shaft erupted in chaos. Vance shoved Lyra down and kicked off the wall, rifle snapping into his hands. The pulse bolt seared past where her head had been a heartbeat ago. Lyra twisted midair, planting her feet against the wall and springing away like a dancer. The scanner core clutched tight. Soren's next shot punched a molten hole through the beam Vance had just pushed off from. Fragments spun like razors through the air. Vance brought up his rifle and returned fire. Blue bolts scorched the shadows, slamming into Soren's armor. The rebel spun away with a snarl, mag boots sparking as he skidded across the ceiling. Run, Vance barked. Lyra didn't argue. She shot down the shaft like a comet, weaving through the floating wreckage. Vance followed, pulse fire roaring past his ears. Drones were converging now, drawn by the noise. Spidery scavenger constructs flashing red as they swarmed in. Damn it, Vance hissed. Mara, bring the ship around. Already moving, Mara replied. They burst into the open docking ring, debris spinning all around them like a shattered halo. The Argonauts swept in from the dark, dorsal guns blazing. Soren dove behind a cargo crane as the ship's cannons shredded the walkway in a hail of fire. Lyra launched herself across the gap, magnetic boots slamming to the Argonaut's hull. Vance landed a second later, grabbing her wrist and hauling her toward the airlock as more bolts hissed past. Soren leapt after them, rifle flashing. Vance spun, planted his boots, and fired. The blast hit Soren square in the chest. The rebel spun off into the void, cursing as his thrusters flared wildly to stabilize. Vance slammed the airlock shut just as another bolt scorched the door. "Punch it!" he barked. Engines roared. The Argonaut ripped free from the dock, scattering burning debris in its wake as it leapt back into the black. Silence again. Vance leaned against the bulkhead, breathing hard. Lyra crouched on the deck across from him, still clutching the crystalline core. Her chest rose and fell fast, but her hands were steady. Her golden eyes burned. "You held on to it," he said. "I said I would." Vance stared at her. For the first time, he saw more than just the wounded girl from Theta 7. He saw steel. "You saved my life back there," he said. "You saved mine first." A small, almost reluctant smile flickered at the corner of her mouth, gone as quick as it came. Vance felt something shift in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. Not since before the wars. He pushed it down. There would be time to think about it later. "Get to the medbay," he said. "We'll decrypt the core and take it straight to the council." Lyra rose smoothly to her feet. "And Kale?" Vance's eyes were cold. "Kale's next." Outside the viewport, Vega Spire fell away behind them like a broken crown. Ahead, the stars stretched endless and waiting. And somewhere out there, Kale Draven was watching, waiting, smiling. The Argonaut tore through slip space like a blade of lightning, its silver wake streaking across the dark. Captain Orion Vance sat in the command chair, jaw locked, watching the star trails bend and ripple across the viewport. The adrenaline from Vega Spire still clung to his muscles like static, but underneath it was something colder, resolve. Kale Draven had tried to erase him, and failed. The crystalline scanner core floated in a stasis cradle beside the console, pulsing softly with captured light. If Lyra was right, it held the proof they needed. Cargo logs, biometric tags, shipment routes. Evidence enough to shatter Kale's network and clear Vance's name before the council. If they lived long enough to deliver it. "Where next?" Mara asked, her voice smooth as cold steel. "Outer Rim," Vance said. "The Helix Bazaar." Lyra stood at the viewport, her silhouette haloed in the starlight glare. "That's a black market freeport." "Exactly," Vance said. "The only place Kale would risk fencing warheads this size. If we can trace his buyers, we can find him." Her golden eyes flickered. "It's not safe." "Nothing worth doing is." She glanced at him, something unreadable in her gaze, then looked back at the stars. Vance didn't press. She was like that, sharp-edged silence wrapped in grace. But he could feel the tension coiled in her shoulders, the same way he could feel the hum of the engines through the deck. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was hunting too. The Helix Bazaar drifted like a skeletal crown above a cracked moon, its twisted docking arms glowing with illicit neon. Once it had been a corporate ring station. Now it was a freeport carved into chaos. Scrap towers welded from derelict freighters, spinning market pods strung with wires like spider silk, and a swirling cloud of scavenger ships hovering like carrion birds. Even from orbit, Vance could see the plasma scars stitched across its hull from a dozen forgotten wars. "Friendly place," he muttered. "Docking Bay 12, Mara said. "Lowest patrol density." Vance throttled the engines down and let the Argonaut drift in like a ghost. The air inside the bazaar was hot and thick, with the smell of ionized metal, stale alcohol, and too many bodies packed into too little space. Music throbbed through the decking, a slow, pulsing beat like the heart of something dying. Crowds surged through the main promenade, mercenaries in scorched armor, traders with cybernetic eyes glowing pale, and black market tech priests muttering prayers to rusted machines. Lyra walked at Vance's side, cloaked in a hooded synth-weave cloak. Even so, her cobalt blue skin drew stares as they moved. Not hostile, Just curious. She ignored them, eyes scanning constantly, movements precise and fluid. Stay close, Vance murmured. Her lips curved faintly. I saved your life last time. Let's keep it from becoming a habit. They slipped into a low-lit data bazaar tucked beneath a collapsed freight gantry. Racks of stolen memory cores and cracked AI matrices glimmered in cages. Behind the counter floated a wrinkled Uvani data broker, its jelly-like body flickering with pulses of green biolight. Vance placed the scanner core on the counter. I need this decrypted, quietly. The Uvani's tendrils rippled, brushing the core. Origin, Vega Spire, military encryption, dangerous. Its voice gurgled through a translation pad. 2 hours, 50,000 credits. Half now, Vance said, sliding a cred chip across. Half when it's done. The Uvani's glow pulsed greedily. Done. As they turned to leave, Lyra spoke softly without looking at him. You trust it? No, Vance said, but I trust its greed. They found a quiet overlook above the promenade, a cracked glass balcony where the hum of the bazaar faded into the background. Lyra stood with her hands on the rail, staring down at the swirling chaos below. Neon glimmered across her face, catching in her golden eyes. She looked distant, like she was seeing a galaxy he couldn't. Your people, Vance said after a moment. They know you're alive? She shook her head. The Lyran spiral does not look back. We drift forward or we vanish. If I go back, they will see only the scars. Vance studied her profile. Scars mean you survived. Scars mean you were broken, she said softly. Then I guess I've been broken for decades. That earned him the faintest flicker of a smile. It was gone almost instantly, but for a heartbeat it warmed something deep in his chest he hadn't felt in years. Before he could say more, Mara's voice cut through the calm. Captain, multiple heat signatures inbound. 6 ships, approaching fast. Vance straightened. Draven? Transponders masked. Vector matches his signature patterns. Lyra's eyes sharpened. He found us. Then let's not be here when he arrives. They were halfway back to the docking bay when the alarms began to scream. Crimson lights flashed across the concourse as shutters slammed down over the promenade. Overhead windows went dark as the void beyond lit with engine flares. 6 attack crafts screaming in from the black, plasma trails cutting bright scars through the dark. Vance and Lyra broke into a run. Crowds scattered. Mercenaries shouted. Vendors bolted steel gates across their stalls. The air filled with the rising thunder of engines and the shriek of klaxons. Bay 12, Vance snapped. They rounded the corner just as the first blast hit. The decking jumped like a struck drum. Fire belched through the hallway behind them, heat slamming Vance's back as he threw an arm around Lyra and drove them both through the half-open bay doors. The Argonaut loomed ahead, dark and still in its berth. Boarding clamps engaged, Mara said calmly. Local control override, manual release required. Of course it is, Vance growled. He sprinted for the docking panel. Lyra stayed close, cloak streaming behind her like smoke. Another blast ripped through the bay doors, tearing them from their hinges. Through the widening gap, Vance saw the attackers now. Sleek black fighters with blood-red stripes knifing through the void. Kale's colors. A voice crackled over the comm, oily and amused. Hello, Captain. Vance froze. Kale Draven's voice was deeper than he remembered. Older. Colder. I see you've picked up a pet. Vance ignored it and ripped the panel open. Wires sparked under his fingers. Lyra, get aboard. I'm not leaving you. I wasn't asking. She hesitated only a moment, then darted up the ramp. Vance jammed the last connector home and slammed the release. The clamps screamed, then let go. The Argonaut lurched free just as the first fighter strafed the bay in a torrent of plasma fire. Vance dove up the ramp as the blast hit. Space swallowed them in a blaze of chaos. The Argonaut roared out of the bay as the bazaar exploded behind them, chunks of metal spinning away like burning leaves. 6 black fighters peeled off the attack formation, engines howling. "Mara, shields full, weapons live," Vance barked. "Shields up, weapons hot." The first volley struck like hammers. The ship shuddered as plasma bolts stitched fire across the dorsal plating. Sparks burst from the ceiling. Lyra dropped into the co-pilot's seat. "They're faster. We're meaner." Vance yanked the yoke, rolling them hard under a stream of fire. The inertial dampers groaned. Stars spun wildly. 2 of the fighters overshot, flashing past the viewport in streaks of red. Vance gunned the engines and dove toward the moon's jagged surface. Dust geysers bloomed as they skimmed the craters at Mach speed. The fighters followed, streaking low. "Rear cannons now," he snapped. Lyra's fingers blurred across the controls. The Argonaut's aft turrets screamed to life, hurling bolts of sapphire plasma. One fighter caught a full volley and blossomed into fire, spinning into the rocks below. "Good shot," Vance said. Lyra didn't answer. Her golden eyes burned like twin suns. They wove through the moon's canyons in a deadly dance. Fire tore past on all sides, lighting the rocks like false dawn. The Argonaut darted and rolled between stone spires, thrusters screaming. One enemy clipped a ridge and disintegrated in a bloom of molten shrapnel. Another tried to flank. Lyra locked on and gutted it with a clean burst. But there were still 3. "They're hurting us," Lyra said sharply. "Toward open space." Then we turned before they expected. Vance slammed the reverse thrusters. The Argonaut flipped end over end, inertia howling, and shot straight back into the face of the pursuers. The sudden reversal caught them off guard. Vance squeezed the triggers. Twin lances of blue fire ripped through the lead fighter's cockpit. It burst like a shattered sun. The last 2 broke formation. One diving under, one streaking overhead. "Evasive," Lyra snapped. Vance spun the ship through a corkscrew roll. The overhead fighter's volleys scorched past inches from the canopy. The underbelly attacker lashed a magnetic harpoon into their hull. "Boarder incoming," Mara warned. Vance cursed. "Keep the ship steady. I'll deal with it." Lyra rose too. "No, I will." He started to argue, but her hood fell back, and for the first time he saw the faint lines glowing beneath her skin. Not tattoos, not scars. Light. Before he could speak, she was gone, slipping down the corridor like living starlight. The boarding hatch rang like a struck bell. The attacker cut through the plating with a plasma saw. The circle of red light widened, molten metal hissing to the deck. The panel fell inward with a clang. Lyra was waiting. The boarder, hulking in black armor, raised his rifle. Lyra moved faster than sight. She became motion and light, her body a blur of blue streaked with gold fire. Her hand slammed into the rifle, shattering it like glass. A burst of energy rippled from her palm, hurling the armored man into the wall hard enough to crack the steel. Sparks hissed from his suit as he slid down, limp. She stood over him, chest heaving, golden eyes blazing like miniature suns. Vance appeared in the hatch behind her, rifle raised, then froze. Lyra turned, her glow dimming slowly, breath ragged. "It is who I am," she said quietly. Vance stared at her. "Remind me never to get on your bad side," he said. For the first time, her smile wasn't fleeting. "Then don't." The last 2 fighters broke off as the Argonauts surged back into open space, their engines flaring away into the dark. Mara's voice came soft over the comm. "Hostiles retreating. Hull integrity at 64%. Shields recharging." Vance slumped into the command chair. Lyra slipped back into the co-pilot's seat, silent, eyes still glowing faintly. For a while, neither spoke. The only sound was the hum of the engines and the slow thud of their hearts settling. "You didn't tell me you could do that," he said at last. "You didn't ask." He glanced at her. "Saved my ship." "You saved me first," she said softly. Her gaze met his, and held. Something passed between them in the silence, something fragile and fierce all at once, like a spark jumping across a gap. Neither of them spoke it. Not yet, but it was there. Vance looked back at the stars, jaw tightening. Next stop is Kale's Byers, then Kale. Lyra's golden eyes glimmered like twin suns against the void. Then let's end this. The Argonaut turned, engines flaring, and vanished into the dark. The coordinates burned on the holomap like a wound. Captain Orion Vance stared at the flickering red marker floating over the starfield, jaw tight, hands braced on the console. Beyond the Argonaut's canopy, the void stretched silent and infinite, stars cold and distant. Somewhere out there, in the hollow shadow of a dead star, Kale Draven was waiting. Waiting to finish what he started. Lyra stood beside him, arms folded across her chest. The dim-bridged lights painted pale fire across her cobalt skin. Her golden eyes were steady, but her voice was quiet when she spoke. "Are you certain he's here?" "He's here," Vance said. Mara traced the quantum jump signatures from the bizarre ambush. Every one of those fighters ran home to the same place. "A fortress." "An asteroid," he corrected. "Hollowed out, bristling with stolen war guns." "That's a fortress." Vance's mouth twitched. "Fair enough." They emerged from slipspace into the shadow of a dead sun. The system was black as pitch, lit only by the faint glow of a collapsed dwarf star, a ghostly ember hanging alone in the dark. And there it was, Kale's base. The asteroid was the size of a small moon, jagged and black, wrapped in a lattice of armored plating and shield nodes, like the ribs of some fossilized beast. Cannon turrets studded its surface, their barrels glinting faintly. Around it hung a cloud of ships, patrol frigates, escort drones, scavenged gunboats welded into something meaner. Hundreds of them. The sight made even Vance's chest tighten. "Subtle," Lyra murmured. "Kale never was," Vance replied. "Mara," he said, "what's our odds in a frontal assault?" 0.4%, the AI said calmly. "Thought so." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Then how?" Vance keyed open a compartment beside his chair. Inside lay a sleek black cylinder, the data spike they had bought years ago during the Perseus Wars. "A virus," he said, "designed to collapse shield grids from the inside." Lyra raised a brow. "Illegal." "Extremely." "Good." For the first time, a thin grin cracked Vance's face. They cut engines and drifted silent through the grave-cold dark, riding a debris trail until they were just outside the fortress's shield envelope. Beyond, the asteroid loomed like a black continent against the dying sun. Vance eased them in close to one of the shield nodes, a spindly tower jutting from the rock. "Ready?" he asked. Lyra was already at the airlock. The soft glow under her skin had returned, faint lines pulsing like starlight through her flesh. "Ready." "Stay in comms. Get the virus into their core, and I'll punch the front door." Lyra's golden eyes caught his. "If I do not return, you will." Her lips curved just slightly. Then she sealed her helmet and vanished into the dark. 0G swallowed her like an ocean. Lyra soared across the void, a blue streak of light trailing behind her. The asteroid's skin loomed closer, jagged iron teeth rimmed with ice. She landed silently on the shield node's superstructure and slithered inside through a maintenance slit. Darkness engulfed her. Only her golden eyes lit the way as she crept through the tangled guts of cables and plasma coils. The hum of power throbbed through her bones. She reached the central conduit, pulled the spike from her belt, and drove it into the core. Blue arcs spiderwebbed across the coils. "Mara," Vance's voice crackled softly in her ear. "Reading power fluctuations. Shields dropping to 70%. "Almost," Lyra whispered. She forced the spike deeper. The fortress shuddered. A wave of blue energy rippled outward from the node like a dying heartbeat. Across the asteroid's surface, shield panels flickered and winked out. Turrets began to rotate, confused. "Shields are down," Mara confirmed. "Window, 3 minutes." "Then let's knock," Vance said. The Argonaut roared out of the dark like a thunderbolt. Its cannons spat blue fire, tearing through the nearest patrol drones. Explosions flowered in the void like shattered suns. The entire ship shuddered as Vance dove through the outer defense ring, plasma trails boiling off the hull. "Direct hit on outer turrets," Mara said. "Incoming frigates." "Good," Vance muttered. "More targets." The first frigate swung broadside, hurling a storm of railgun slugs. The Argonauts' shields flared white. Lyra clambered back through the airlock just as Vance spun them through a corkscrew roll, sliding under the barrage. "Welcome back," he said tightly. "I said I would return. Hold that thought. Missiles." Lyra dropped into the co-pilot's seat, fingers flying across the fire control as 3 guided warheads streaked toward them. She locked the point defense grid and unleashed a hail of plasma bolts. 2 missiles detonated in white blossoms. The third skimmed their belly plating, rattling the ship like a drum. "Shields at 43%, Mara warned. Vance gritted his teeth. "Punching through." They dove straight at the asteroid. Turrets screamed fire. The Argonaut weaved through them, plating glowing from the heat. They smashed through a half-sealed hangar bay in a storm of shattered metal, skidded across the deck, and came to rest in a spray of sparks. "Silence." Vance rose, breath sharp. "Grab the data core. We finish this." Lyra lifted the scanner sphere from its cradle. Its inner light shimmered like captured stars. Then they ran. Kale's fortress was a labyrinth of iron. Hallways twisted through the rock like arteries, lit by the dull glow of flickering emergency strips. The air smelled of scorched oil and metal. Their boots rang on steel grates as they moved fast and silent through the corridors, avoiding patrols, slipping past automated sentries. Lyra's steps made no sound at all. She flowed like living shadow, eyes blazing faintly. Vance couldn't help but watch her out of the corner of his eye. Even here in the heart of Kale's empire, she looked utterly unafraid, like the void itself had learned to walk. They reached the central data vault, a massive steel sphere suspended over a chasm of humming power coils. "This is it," Vance murmured. They slipped inside. The vault was a cathedral of cold light. Transparent data pylons rose like crystal spires, humming with blue code. At the far end stood the master core, a monolithic pillar of black glass laced with red light. Vance strode forward and froze. A voice rolled from the shadows. "I hoped it would be you." Kel Draven stepped into the light. Time had carved him into something harder. Once he had been all sharp smiles and silver uniforms. Now he was iron, taller, broader, clad in black combat armor etched with crimson runes. His face was a map of scars, his eyes cold as voidstone, and in his hand hung a coil gun, leveled at Vance's heart. "Orion Vance," Kale said softly, "the galaxy's last righteous man." Vance raised his rifle. "Kale, you should have stayed forgotten. You should have stayed dead." Kale smiled thinly. "I tried that. Didn't take." Lyra shifted beside him, golden eyes burning. "You burned me with his mark." Kale's gaze flicked to her. "Ah, the witness. Still breathing. Impressive." "You failed," she hissed. "No," Kale said. "I planted fear. The council will see the brand before they see the truth. They always do." "Not this time," Vance said. He hurled the scanner core. It hit the master pillar with a crack, light exploding across the vault. Holograms flared in the air, Kale's ships offloading quantum warheads, manifests, biometric tags, all of it damning and clear. Kale's smile vanished. Then he fired. Chaos detonated. The coil slugs screamed past Vance's head, shattering a data pylon into a storm of blue shards. Lyra launched herself sideways, a streak of cobalt fire. Vance dove behind a console as Kale's next shot scorched the wall. Vance popped up and returned fire. Bolts of plasma slammed into Kale's armor, staggering him. Kale roared and charged. They collided in the center of the vault like titans. Vance's rifle went spinning. Kale's gauntlets slammed into his chest plate, hurling him across the deck. Vance hit hard, rolled, came up with a combat blade in his fist. Kale drew a crackling shock saber, its red edge hissing. The blades met in a burst of sparks. Kale was stronger. Every blow rattled Vance's bones, but Vance was faster, ducking, sidestepping, slashing low. Sparks screamed from Kale's armor. Kale's saber clipped his shoulder, searing through the plating. Pain flared white-hot down his arm. "Still fighting lost wars," Kale snarled, hammering another blow. "You can't save them. You never could." "I don't save everyone," Vance gritted, locking blades. "Just the ones who matter." He drove his boot into Kale's knee. The ex-commander roared, stumbling. Vance slammed his blade into Kale's chest plate, sparks erupting. "Nah! Now, Lyra!" he shouted. Lyra had climbed the master pillar like a living comet. Energy blazed from her hands as she tore open the data core's shielding. Power screamed through the vault, making the air crackle. She plunged her glowing fingers into the core and released a surge of raw light. The entire fortress shook. Circuits overloaded, conduits burst, alarms wailed as every screen on the pillar lit with Kale's crimes, broadcasting them out through the fortress's own comm relays. Straight to the council. Kale froze, eyes going wide as the holograms around them flickered, his face on every screen, his voice signing the forged manifests. "No!" he snarled. Vance slammed his fist across Kale's jaw. Kale went down hard. Lyra dropped from the pillar and landed beside Vance, chest heaving, skin blazing with golden light. "It's done," she said. Vance's breath rasped. He stared at Kale sprawled at their feet, fury and exhaustion warring in his chest. Then the deck lurched violently. "Captain," Mara's voice snapped in his ear. "Multiple warheads powering up. Self-destruct sequence initiated." Vance grabbed Lyra's arm. "Move!" They ran. The fortress came apart behind them. They sprinted through collapsing corridors as explosions tore the asteroid's heart to molten shrapnel. Fire chased them down the tunnels. Whole bulkheads peeled away, sucked screaming into the void. They dove into the hangar just as the Argonaut rose from the deck on blazing engines. Vance shoved Lyra up the ramp, followed close behind. The hatch slammed. "Go!" he barked. Engines howled. The Argonaut blasted free of the hangar as the entire asteroid split open behind them. A star-bright detonation blooming out into the black. Shards of molten rock tumbled away like dying embers. Silence returned, vast and cold. Vance slumped into the chair. Lyra stood beside him, still glowing faintly, chest rising and falling like slow waves. Outside, the shattered remains of Kale's empire drifted into darkness. "It's over," she whispered. Vance shook his head. "Not yet. The council needs the truth. Then it's over." She looked at him, golden eyes soft now, no fire, just light. "You still believe in truth?" "Someone has to." For a moment, they just stared at each other. The void beyond the glass burned cold and endless. And for the first time, Vance let himself believe they might actually make it. The Argonaut drifted through the silver haze of council space like a wounded hawk returning to its eyrie. Captain Orion Vance sat alone on the bridge, eyes fixed on the colossal arc of the Galactic Council citadel hanging in the void ahead. It wasn't a station so much as an artificial world, a colossal ring wrapped around a blue-white star, its inner surface glittering with oceans, cities and towers taller than mountains. Sunlight curved along the ring's horizon like molten gold. He had seen it 1,000 times, but never like this. This time he wasn't coming as a soldier. This time he was coming to stand trial. Behind him, the hatch hissed open. Lyra stepped quietly onto the bridge, cloaked once more in her dark synthweave. She looked stronger now, her cobalt skin healed, her bearing proud, though faint scars of light still traced her shoulders, where Kale's brand had been burned. Her golden eyes glimmered in the starshine. "You're quiet," she said softly. "Thinking," Vance said. "Dangerous habit." He almost smiled. Almost. "You don't have to come in with me." "I do," she said simply. "They won't listen to you alone." He glanced at her and found no fear there, only steady fire. Maybe he had never been alone at all. They docked in the Citadel's central ring, the Argonauts sliding into the cavernous hangar beneath towering white pylons. The air inside smelled of ozone and polished marble. Guards in silver armor waited, their faces hidden behind mirrored visors. "Captain Orion Vance," the lead intoned, "you are summoned before the High Tribunal." Vance nodded once. "Let's get this done." Lyra walked beside him through the cathedral-like corridors, past waterfalls of light cascading down crystal walls, past quiet rows of human and alien officials, watching them with cold curiosity. Whispers followed in their wake. Old stories of Vance's name, whispered tarnish, whispered disgrace. Let them whisper, he thought. By the time they were done, Cale's name would be the one burning. The tribunal chamber was vast and silent. A circular arena of black stone surrounded a sunken platform, at whose center floated a crystalline dais of hard light. On it sat the three high arbiters, their robes a shimmer of pale silver, faces masked by veils of starlight. Their voices came as harmonized echoes, cold and precise. "Captain Orion Vance," intoned the center arbiter, "you stand accused of war crimes, illicit weapons smuggling, and treason against the Terran Expeditionary Corps. Evidence has been presented that a non-human subject bore your mark, inverted and burned into her flesh." Vance stepped forward, chin high. "That evidence was fabricated." "By whom?" "Cale Draven," Vance said, voice like steel. "And I can prove it." A ripple of murmurs swept the chamber. The arbiters' veils flickered faintly. "Present your proof," they said. Vance nodded to Lyra. She stepped forward, lifting the crystalline scanner sphere. It pulsed like a captured star. "This holds Cale's manifests, biometric signatures, cargo records of stolen quantum warheads moved through Vegaspire, and his plan to frame Vance using me." She placed it in the dais. Light flared. Holograms cascaded into the air. Cale's ships, Cale's voice authorizing the theft. Cale's face overseeing the loading bays. The images spun slowly over the chamber like a silent storm. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Then Jasper Finn's recorded oath played, retrieved from the fortress broadcast Lyra had forced out. Vance had almost forgotten the old blacksmith's name until Mara recovered the comm logs from the debris. Jasper's deep voice declared under oath that Cale had stolen the brander, used to scar Lyra, that it had carried Vance's mark carved backward. When the last echo faded, the chamber fell utterly silent. The central arbiter spoke, voice resonating like cold glass. "This evidence is conclusive. Cale Draven lives," Vance said, stepping closer, "or lived until his fortress self-destructed. He built an empire on stolen death, and he tried to burn my name with it. He has failed," the arbiter said simply. When they emerged from the chamber hours later, the world had changed. Council banners hung bright along the promenade. Report drones hovered like silver bees, their lenses blinking. As Vance and Lyra descended the crystal steps, a cheer rose from the crowd of officers gathered below. "Vance! Vance!" He froze, blinking at the sound. It had been a long time since anyone had cheered his name. A tall figure in formal uniform strode through the throng. Admiral Sal Arcton, commander of the Expeditionary Corps. He stopped before Vance, eyes bright with something between pride and apology. "You were right," Arcton said quietly. "We should have known." "You should have," Vance agreed. Arcton actually smiled, still sharp as ever. "The tribunal has restored your command, effective immediately." Vance shook his head. "No, I'm done." Arcton blinked. "You would refuse the Corps?" "I served long enough," Vance said. "Let the new blood carry the flag. I've seen enough war." For a moment, Arcton just studied him, then nodded slowly. "Then, thank you, Orion, for not letting us forget who we were." He turned and walked back through the cheering crowd. Vance stood still as the noise washed around him, as if it belonged to someone else. He felt lighter, hollow but clean. Beside him, Lyra was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read, something softer than he'd ever seen on her face. "You could have had it all back," she said quietly. I didn't want it. What do you want? Vance thought about it and found to his surprise he knew the answer. Tomorrow, he said. Just tomorrow. Her lips curved faintly. Then let's find it. They left the citadel at dusk cycle, the Argonaut gliding out through the silver spires into the velvet dark. Mara piloted them away from the core worlds, threading through golden starfields. The air aboard the ship seemed quieter somehow, as if even the hum of the engines had eased. Lyra stood at the viewport, watching the stars wheel. It is done, she said softly. Yes, Vance said. It's done. No, she corrected gently. It is beginning. He looked at her. She had changed in ways he couldn't quite name. The scars on her shoulder were faint now, but he knew they would never truly fade. And yet she stood straighter, brighter, her golden eyes steady on the infinity beyond the glass. No longer the broken girl he had carried out of the dark. Now she was something else, something stronger. So was he. They settled on a quiet way station at the edge of known space, an abandoned orbital garden wrapped around a tiny blue moon. No crowds, no wars, only silence and the soft green glow of the garden domes drifting above the moon's pale seas. Vance spent the first few days repairing the Argonaut, replacing scorched plating and fried circuit boards, while Lyra walked the glass gardens alone. He watched her sometimes from the porch of the docking gantry, her silhouette drifting through the glowing leaves like a phantom of light and shadow. On the fourth evening, he found her standing at the outer ring, staring down at the moon. It's beautiful, she said without turning. Your world is always burning. I've forgotten it could be beautiful. It's not my world, he said. Not anymore. She glanced at him. Then whose is it? Maybe yours. That drew a small smile. The council has granted me free status, citizenship, a name in their archives. I do not know what to do with it. Live, Vance said simply. The breeze stirred faint motes of starlight through the air between them. Lyra stepped closer. You carried me from the dark, she said softly. You gave me back more than my life. You gave me back mine, he said. For a moment they just stood there, the void endless around them, the moon turning slow beneath their feet. Then quietly, Lyra reached for his hand. Her fingers were cool and light as starlight. He closed his hand around hers, rough and scarred and steady. No words. None were needed. That night they sat together on the porch of the Argonaut, a bottle of synth wine between them, stars drifting like silent embers across the dark. Lyra leaned against his shoulder, eyes half-lidded, watching the universe roll on. You said once you don't save everyone, she murmured. I don't, he said, but I save who I can. And if saving me had cost everything? He looked down at her, and the corner of his mouth curved. Then it would have been worth it. Her golden eyes glimmered. I believe you. Silence settled, soft and full. For the first time in decades, Vance didn't feel like he was carrying anything at all. They left the way station at dawn, engines flaring pale gold against the dark. The Argonaut slid past the moon and vanished into the sea of stars. No orders, no missions, just the infinite. Lyra stood beside him at the helm, her hand still loosely holding his. Where to? Mara asked. Anywhere, Vance said. Lyra's lips curved. Everywhere. Vance smiled faintly and pushed the throttle. The stars stretched out before them like a river of fire, endless and waiting. For the first time, he let himself believe they could reach them. Together. The end.